Holla.
Sponsored by Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. Let's give the Deltas. Let's give the Deltas when you get to the chair. All right, AJ's almost there. Yeah, AJ's there. Let's give the Deltas a round of a hand. They have been supporting the White Plains Greenberg NAACP as co-sponsors for many of the events. Let's keep it going. It's about accountability, responsibility, and education. Educating the people in the towns and villages that we live in, so they could take control of what they're trying to do. AJ Woodson is live again. Okay, let's do it again.
Yes, but it's live. But when you click on it, it says something went wrong.
No, I got it. Okay. I'm up.
What the
maybe.
heck?
I'm back. Okay, so everybody tuned in. Phyllis, Hollis, Cole, tuned in to let us know.
There we go.
With us, but she can't hang out with us tonight because Grace is streaming something special live. So
Who?
Phyllis, Hollis, Cole. That was had a lot of comments in the last show going back and forth with you from your show.
Oh.
Why am I hearing other noises?
That's me trying to figure out this video. And it's not working for me. Oh, okay, I got it. I'm in the house.
Okay. she said she's still with us though. But she's not gonna hang with us. You can watch Phyllis, you can when you finish watching that, you can watch the just click on it later and you can watch the whole show. Gail said I'm back.
Hi, Gail.
That's Gail Baxter?
Yeah.
Hey, Gail, what's happening? Also, before our guests get here, we also want to remind everybody next Friday, the Westchester Correction Association will be having its first annual event at. I gotta forget the flyer, man. I'm so much going on. I can't remember everything.
Real quick, Sean Patterson Howard's tuned in. Nicole Page is tuned in.
Well, I can't get out of this.
Wilfred Dennis is tuned in. Before we go on, yesterday was a great. Yesterday, Mike was off. Yesterday was great. We actually had what they called the children's Christmas party all day at the embassy on on First Street. We had a toy giveaway and gingerbread house party by Cupcake Cutie, sponsored by Councilman Andre Wallace, sponsored by Black Westchester, sponsored by the Westchester Corrections Association, and Cupcake Cutie, of course. It was a beautiful thing. I don't know how many kids would you say? It was at least 100, 150 kids all together. It was a Jonathan Newton just tuned in.
Jonathan, what's happening?
It was a wealth of kids there.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a wealth of kids there. They all got their gifts. Took pictures with Black Santa. That was a beautiful thing.
It was Black Santa's first time in Mount Vernon.
Yeah, Black Santa was in the house.
That was so cool.
Yeah, Black Santa was in the place to be. It was a great, and he wasn't like the regular Santa. Black Santa had rhythm. Black Santa was chilling, yo. Black Santa was chilling, yo. Word up.
He was dancing and everything. I saw the video.
I was like, oh, look at Santa. Look at Black Santa getting down. Word up, word up. Chilling. But it was a festive event. Here's one picture of Councilman Wallace with a lot of the kids.
Wow.
Yeah, and those are just the kids at the end. Those are not the kids. There was a lot of kids that came through early and had already left. But
you got a picture of Black Santa there?
No, we're gonna show Black Santa.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna show Black Santa in all his glory. Where's the volume at? Where's the volume?
Yo, is Kat, your friend, a Democrat?
Yes.
Okay.
She's supposed to come on the show too.
We can't take another term.
It's
a Black Santa.
Check out Santa.
Dominican
He's
did.
the coolest Santa ever, man. I swear to God.
Where's the volume, man? Where's the volume?
Yo, it's
yeah,
cat.
yeah. Yo, Cynthia had me going. Cynthia was like, yo, that was like, she said it wasn't only funny watching you dance. She said, but me laughing in the background just kept laughing. And the Westchester County Corrections Association said, one Santa Claus you know is fly like this. Hey, how are you, sir? How you doing,
sir?
All right, nice to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to be seen, too. Shout out to Joanne. Shout out to Joanne from the Just Crazy show. Comes on Tuesdays. Definitely shout out to her. She used to be on the show after us. Now she got a show with Cruz called the Just Crazy Show. We were just talking about but yeah, yesterday was a great event. The kids loved it. And it was people that came through in the community that was like, yo, this is what we need more of in Mount Vernon for the kids.
Absolutely.
You know
Tell
what I'm
us
saying?
who
And that's
sponsored it.
I did, but I will do it again.
I was sorry.
It was sponsored. It was sponsored by Cupcake Cutie Boutique.
Yay.
It was sponsored by the Westchester Correction Association. It was sponsored by Councilman Andre Wallace. It was sponsored by Black Westchester.
Nice.
Yes.
And Coleman and West. I can't remember, West Pack or West Cobb.
West Cobb is in the building, so it must be West Cobb.
West Cobb.
Yeah.
And Coleman. And the AKAs was involved. The AKAs was there.
Right.
Yeah.
And shout out to Black Girls Bake.
Yeah, Black Girls Bake and the AKAs.
That's nice. There was enough gifts for every single kid, right?
We still had gifts, and the AKAs went to the holding shelter today,
right,
and passed out some more gifts. And
they
book bags.
Yeah, they packed the book bags.
They packed the book bags
and sent the book bags were for gifts to all the kids.
Oh,
yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So it was,
and there was still gifts left.
Yeah, and there was
still gifts under that tree.
Really?
Yeah,
Still
yeah,
gifts under the tree and under the table.
All the sponsors and people that came forth with the toys. I mean, it was an all-day event.
Yeah,
I was
done.
A lot of happy families.
Yes, I was done. I was Santa Claus.
I mean, because kids actually kids were able to get
from
more.
1 to at least 6 o'clock. I was Santa Claus. You know.
The shop steward called, told him he was working.
Yeah,
past
even
his.
the Santa shop steward said you're working on. You know, you're violating the rules of Santa. You gotta take a break. You know.
He didn't get a pizza break. He didn't
Right, he didn't get a pizza break. You know, I tried to drink some sangria, got on the bed, but that didn't work.
Oh my
So
God, Santa drinking sangria, what a sight.
Yeah. After a while, I had to drink some sangria.
Shout to Renard Daniels and your boy Jonathan Newton said, before we get into anything else, can we crank it up a little bit about Omarosa's departure and Doug Jones' win?
Real quick, because we got a guest here. Omarosa, goodbye. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, Doug Jones. I really, you know, a lot of people are talking all over the internet how the black vote actually turned out for Doug Jones, and I think that's a beautiful thing for Alabama. I just hope that the Democratic Party and
Alabama's a red state, right? They normally,
so that's that they continue to turn out. You know, that they get that message across to the grassroots that they can continue. It's all in the message, man. It's all in the message, and just Nina Turner. Nina Turner said something very unique on CNN. She said, and when referring to Alabama, she said that the black vote should not be emergency box. You break it in case of emergency.
Yeah.
You have to continue to reach out to the communities, reach out to those neighborhoods, build your platform, explain your platform, so people can come out. So I hope in Alabama, they will continue to do that. So maybe they could turn Alabama blue one day, you know, because that was a very big win for Alabama.
And you know what? And it's not only that the politicians need to reach out to the black community needs to make them reach out to them. They need to step up and make their voices heard so that they do reach out. They're not going to just reach out to them because it's the right thing to do. You got to give them a reason to reach out to you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Couple of last shout-outs, Loretta Thomas, Chris Breezy, I can't never pronounce your last name, Charles Stern, Gabriel Tolliver, I think that was everybody I didn't name yet. Yes, Sean Patterson, Howard, I named already. Yes.
All right. Well, without further ado,
we're going to let you introduce the guests.
Yeah, without further ado, we got Assemblyman Thomas J. Abanati. He's from the 92nd District, Assembly District, which consists of Greenburgh, my hometown, and Mount Pleasant. Welcome, sir. Welcome.
Welcome.
First, a round of applause.
First of all, thank you for letting me come by.
Yeah.
I've been here. It's a great privilege and pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
I was over in White Plains, and I said I have to rush out. And when I told them where I was going, he said, "You better get moving, get out of here. You got to go." They knew you well. So they knew you well. Can I start off by saying I applaud what AJ just said. I think we've got, we've been criticized in the Democratic Party for having, politics on the basis of religion, race, color, creed, all this stuff. We're all one people. And I agree with you. The Democrats have to reach out to the black community and all the other communities. And I think those communities, though, have to reach out themselves. There's self-empowerment here. They got to stand up and say, we're part of the Democratic Party. And, we want to be heard.
Right.
And we want to have a choice in some of who the candidates are. We want to determine what the issues are. And we've got to work together.
Absolutely.
Because you saw here that when you had somebody who stood up for what was right, people who were of good faith, good beliefs, came out. And we got to talk about those issues. We got to make sure that we're all in this together. We can't let the Republicans divide us up. And it's not. I shouldn't say Republicans, because by and large now it's Republicans. But I think this is people of bad faith. There were a lot of good Republicans out there. I've had some.
Just sitting right next to one.
There's the one right there.
There you go. All right, there you go. But I think that's true. I mean, we've got to appeal to people who care about other people. That's what this is all about. We're all in this together.
Right. I mean, look, I have people that are Republicans, even outside of my co-hosts, people that are Republicans, and sometimes we could agree to disagree.
Absolutely.
But on a national scale, the Republican Party has taken a turn which is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But we can work together. I mean, I don't think we could. We don't have to political gangbang. We don't have to, be the blues and the reds all the time, the bloods and the crips. Right. We don't have to do that. I think we could, if we work for the betterment of everybody. I think that could happen. I think that can happen. Is that happening in the state?
It's hard to say. It is hard to say. Although I would tell you, in New York, what I have seen. Okay, in the state legislature, is by and large, I think you have people who are more reasonable. They've gotten themselves elected. We might disagree on different views and different issues, but I don't see the same kind of animosity and hatred that I'm seeing coming out of Washington.
Right. Okay.
I just not.
It's different in the local level than it is in the national
but even
level.
on the state level too. That's what he's saying. The intermediate level. I don't see that same hatred. You might have a few people here and there, but it's not the same kind of thing. The Republican Party seems to be more interested in pushing their issues for their people than they are dragging down the others.
Okay.
And so in the process now, everybody's fighting for those few dollars. So therefore, it may look like they're attacking certain communities, but I think it's all about just grabbing the money. That you give me my money for my community, I'm happy.
I want to backstep just a little bit. We try to educate people as much as possible, and a lot of people don't know what is an assemblyman. What does an assemblyman do?
That's fine.
Great question.
Where do I start? We got a federal government, we've got a state government, we have local governments. You may remember they call it these United States.
Right.
So the state of New York is one of the building blocks. We've now got, 50 of us? 50 states making up the federal government. And New York, similar to the federal government, has an executive. Our president is called the governor. We have two houses of the legislature, In Washington, you've got the House of Representatives and the Senate. In New York State, we have the New York State Assembly and the New York Senate.
Okay.
So we've got two houses.
Okay.
Unlike Washington, where a senator gets elected, 2 from each state for 6 years, in New York State, the senator gets elected for 2 years. There's 63 of them. So the state of New York is divided up into 63 boxes. Supposed to be about equal.
Okay.
And the Assembly, where I sit, there's 150 of us. So the state of New York is divided up into 150 boxes. My box that I represent is a very nice, neat one. I represent the town of Greenburgh and the town of Mount Pleasant.
Okay.
And you've got several assembly members. Let's see, down here in Yonkers, you've got Gary Pretlow, who represents Mount Vernon and Yonkers. You got Shelley Mayer, who represents I think just Yonkers.
Who's running for?
Yeah, she's talking about running for Latimer's seat in the state senate.
She's supposed to come on our show in sometime in January. We haven't got a confirming date yet.
I just left her a few minutes ago. I saw her down at an event on the Yonkers Greenburgh border, and then we were both in White Plains together. And she said she had somewhere else to go, and I came here. So I think I got the better deal.
Yeah, we're glad you're here. We're glad you're here.
Anyway, so we've got a governor, 2 houses of the legislature, and then like on the federal system, we've got a judiciary. We've got our highest court, in our case, is called the Court of Appeals. And then we have the appellate divisions below them, and then you have Supreme Courts, which is a misnomer because they're the lowest level of the state courts, but they're the highest trial level courts.
Okay.
You also have a county court, a family court,
Right.
Local criminal courts, town courts, city courts. So that's why they're called Supreme Courts. They're the state lowest level court. Okay. But that's our system. And it's very similar to what you learn in school about the federal government. We pass one of the most important things we do is pass a budget for the state of New York, which I think is up to 153 or 155. You include certain monies, $160 billion. Wow.
Wow.
It's a lot of money.
Yes,
we're talking about a lot of money. So we passed that budget. In New York, the governor has an immense amount of power. When you go from state to state to state, the constitutions of the state determine the balance of power between the legislative branch and the executive branch. In New York, the governor has a lot of power, and this governor exercises that power to the fullest. He's constantly pushing to accumulate more and more power in addition to what he had, practical power in addition to what he's given in the Constitution. So, we're going back. We served for about 6 months in Albany, and then the rest of the year in our district offices.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I'm not sure. It depends how you look at it.
Okay.
I think having a part-time legislature is a good thing, but in fact we turn out to be full-time with just part-time pay.
Right.
We might be better off meeting all year round, a few days a week, and then they wouldn't feel this rush. People know that you want to end by a certain date, so the important stuff gets held until the end,
and then
you just push it through because you got a deadline now. On the other hand, I would like to see us have more hearings on things, more conversations back in the community about this stuff we're doing, and not have it pushed through at the end.
Right.
Same thing happens to the budget. The budget year ends, March 31, so we've got to pass a budget by April 1, which is crazy because the governor makes his presentation in January, and he has he's got until a couple of weeks later to actually make changes in it. And we've got to pass a budget, $160 billion by, so we have people who say you got a huge staff. We got a small staff when you figure that they have to deal with $160 billion. So everybody who works on every committee, who's doing whatever, is brought in to deal with the budget.
Right.
So everything else stops. Pretty much. I mean, it's hard to move something new during those first months because if there's going to be a mental health issue, so the people from the mental health committee are going to be working on it. There's going to be criminal justice issues, so people from the codes committee. So every one of our committees, and I guess that leads us to the other issue. We're broken up into committees.
Right.
I don't know. We have some 30 committees. I never counted them, but we've got a committee on everything. But that's good because you're trying to get some expertise. You bring in a new legislator, you come in, and now you're new. You might have expertise in an area, you might not.
Right.
So, I have some expertise in some areas. I was a county legislator for 19 years. I was a town councilman for 6. So I come in with a broad background. And the Westchester legislature is a real legislature. It deals with everything. So that was a good experience.
Right.
But you have a lot of people who come in. They may have been a lawyer, they may have been a nurse, they may have been a homemaker, whatever. And so they come in with their experiences, but they may never have been involved in policy making before.
Right.
And so now they've got to learn.
Right.
So you try to put people on committees where they have an interest. If you're from upstate New York, you might be on the agriculture committee.
Right.
If you're from Yonkers, you may end up on the cities committee. If you're from, whatever.
Right.
So I have an interest in certain areas as an attorney and my background in government. So I've after a couple of years, I ended up getting on the Codes Committee, which is one of like the 2 clearinghouse committees. The Ways and Means Committee is the Finance Committee, and the Codes Committee is the other clearinghouse committee.
Okay.
Most legislation goes through one of those 2 committees.
Okay.
But I'm also on the Environment Committee. I was very interested in the environment here in Westchester County. I'm on the Health Committee now because I'm really very interested in our health policy.
Right.
But so we work through committees. But as I said, at budget time, all of the staff is this in the budget. There's something about every area.
Right.
So everybody's got to dive into it, and it's so complicated. And I don't know how men and women do this. I guess they get some expertise, and year after year they look at the same stuff to see what's changed. It's just there's no other way to do it.
Right.
How many for people that don't know, because a lot of people, one thing that we wanted to do with this show, and even the paper and the magazine, is to educate people in the political process. A lot of people don't know, how a budget is passed and what goes into, like you're explaining, to pass a budget. Now, when a budget is given to you, how many pages is that budget?
It's this thing. I don't know how many pages. It comes in. Look, I was on the county legislature, and the budget looked like the old Manhattan phone book, okay? But every year it looked the same.
Right.
And you could compare page to page, and you could see this system. I've been doing this for 7 years now. I cannot describe to you in detail how this budget works. We have like 7 different bills, each one of which might be this thick.
Wow.
And it's in script. So it would be amend the line such and such at such and such a place by inserting the following words. Now that means if you really want to read this, you've got to go back. I mean, the county budget was numbers.
Right.
And you could see last year's column, this
right.
year's column, the year before column,
right.
And you go through and you compare. Okay, so now we only have 40 people working in this part of the Public Works Department instead of 45 like last year.
Right.
Okay, and then there might be a separate section dealing with some language, but instead what we have are all of these substitutions. So you really need staff to explain to you what does this mean.
Wow.
And it's a very staff-intensive project. Now, I suppose if you've been there long enough and you spend your time reading this year after year after year, you yourself will see the difference.
Right.
I got to tell you, I can't. What we fortunately have is a good Ways and Means staff, and they produce for us a synopsis of what's in the budget.
Okay.
And then we meet in conference, and we'll ask, okay, wait a minute, so he's reducing this, but putting money over here. What's going on?
Right.
Well, he's decided that he wants to take the enforcement function of this department and move it over to here. And so, I mean, a good example of that is an area where I have a great concern is the Department of the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities. And there was a whole series of articles in the New York Times about mistreatment of people in facilities.
Right.
And the governor decided what he was going to do was take the enforcement mechanism from all of the different agencies that deal with people with disabilities and put them into one entity, the Justice Center. I'm not excited about the way that's functioning. But
I saw the press release.
Right, but let's just use that as an example. So that means he took $30 million out of these different departments, put them together in one office, and built a new enforcement entity. So trying to track that now, only staff could do that.
Right.
With help from his staff, like, okay, so what did you do? where did you get these jobs over here? You're reducing this over here. And now our job is to make sure when he says he's reducing, it's a 1-for-1.
Right.
And it's not, 1 for 2 or 2 for 1 or whatever. Like what's going on here?
Right.
And so that's an example of how complex this is. So we're reduced, or our job more is policy. So the staff comes to us as best as they can and say, okay, here's what the governor's doing here. What's our policy on this? Do we like this? We don't like this? And often you'll get a significant policy issue about the governor decides that he wants to put more money into a particular area. So now, do we want to do that? Let's take education, big broad brush. The state of New York puts in about $23 billion into the education system of the state of New York, K through 12. So every year there's a big push. We want to put in $3 billion more. The governors always come in with $500 million. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or Republican, they come in with, because they know this is a place the legislature is going to push. They'll put money in areas where they know the legislature isn't going to push and that they want. Okay? So the first big policy issue is, okay, how do we divide up the money? Because there are different pots that you could put this money in. You could put it into what we have a formula. It's called the foundation aid, which is a relatively new approach to funding education. But there's a formula that distributes this money out to the different school districts. And so now the question is, how much do we put into this formula? And how much money do we put into special programs? Because we're recognizing that the formula doesn't necessarily meet all of the needs. You have new students coming in, immigrants, kids that English is a second language. And you have a lot of them in Yonkers, but you also have them in Ossining. You also have them in Portchester. You have them all over. Peekskill, right. You got them in places which may not be favored by the formula. And you need more money for these kids. They're high maintenance. Let's put it that way. I mean, you got to teach them English first before they can learn. Or you have to have bilingual teachers. And it's not only just Spanish. I mean, up in Buffalo, they've got kids coming in from everywhere in the world. They've got neighborhoods up there that are filling up with some of the the Near Eastern, not Near Eastern.
Middle East.
I'm sorry, Syria and places like that. Yeah. Wow. So and that's converting their neighborhoods. So we're not the only ones with an influx of kids. I mean, now you have Puerto Rico. Most of those kids speak English, but there are going to be some that don't. And so that's going to. So we're trying to do that. Then you've got some schools that really just haven't made it, and we call them challenge schools. The governor calls them failing schools. We think challenge. There's a better definition for them. But we want to put some extra money in to help those schools.
Can I ask you a question? Where does the charter school fall in? And we're going to have a show on that later. And I know we have one gentleman who is head of one of the charter schools listening. So because a lot of complaints were that the charter school takes money from the public school, and then the charter school people said that's not true. And then there's this thing go back and forth. So what is the charter school?
I don't know where the charter schools originated, but the way it was explained to me is that we were going to set up a series of private schools that were going to experiment. And on the basis of their experimentation, we were going to learn for our public school systems on how to do things better. And all of a sudden, it's burgeoned into this big system of a lot of schools. Now, by definition, some of them are considered public schools. But if you were to look at those schools and look at the public schools that were right down the street, there is no way they are run the same way.
Absolutely not. And they also dictate who they take and who they don't take, right?
Well, they are run privately.
Right.
They do not have to meet the same standards as our public schools do. They don't have the same requirements for teachers. They don't have to, most of them are not unionized. Some of them are, but most of them are not. And so they're really a different animal. And so I think we have a couple in Yonkers. I don't have many in my district.
There's one in Yonkers.
I know we have one in Mount Vernon, Amani.
Right. And now, how are they financed? They are financed on a per pupil basis by the school district in which they're located.
Yep.
So they're taking money from the Yonkers budget, and they're taking money from the Mount Vernon budget. So I don't see how they can say that they're not draining money from the school system. They're getting a per capita fee for each child that they take. Now, as you know, there's a certain benefit to doing things in one big, what's the word I'm looking for, I guess. There's a savings if you do everything together.
Right.
So you have one superintendent of schools for Yonkers, one for Mount Vernon.
Right.
Now all of a sudden you've got another superintendent or principal or whatever who's running another school system.
Basically, right.
Right?
Absolutely.
And
So they don't answer to.
And they don't answer
to nobody.
They don't answer to anybody but themselves, right?
Oh wow.
Okay? Now, then they try to say, well, what we're doing is providing smaller classes, and we are providing a better education. In some cases they do, in some cases they don't. But so far, we haven't seen any. They're not taking the kids don't have to take the same tests. They don't have to meet the same standard.
They don't have to take the standardized tests.
In some cases they do, in some cases they don't.
That's interesting.
But how did that? The lady in New York.
She built a little empire. Yeah, I'm trying to remember her name.
Yeah.
Former city councilwoman.
Yeah, I mean, it's like she's a political. Like she has schools, but she's just as strong as the mayor. Because I've seen her press conferences. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
I'm not a fan of charter schools. I recognize, look, every kid deserves to go to a good school, and every kid deserves to get a very good education. And I'm very disappointed that some of our public schools just don't do that. But I don't think the answer is to set up another parallel system paid for by the taxpayer. I think the answer is change the principal. Change the teachers.
Stop firing
do
people.
Exactly. Do what's got to be done.
I
Do what's got to
say
be
that.
done. You know,
Once you start firing people, the change comes.
Or look, it's very hard too. But you've got to. You may have to use. You may have to transfer kids from one school to another. It's very difficult. People like to have a neighborhood school.
Right.
And even the poor people whose schools are not doing real well, they like their kid to be able to walk to school.
Right.
But sometimes you have to say, look, we've got to move the people around a little bit.
Right.
And it's more special. The other thing that I believe here is sometimes kids start off with a disadvantage. Their parents may not be educated. They may come from a broken home. They just don't have the money necessary. Well, there's a concept out there, a wraparound concept, where you provide the services at the school.
Right.
And that works very well. I think it's called a community school. I'm sure there's some in Yonkers, but I know they have one in Portchester, for example, that has worked very, very well. And it's all about money.
Right.
And there are a lot of caring teachers out there who just don't have the resources.
There's a lot of resources. Well, I mean, yeah.
And this is the future. You got to spend the money, not go to another school system. Look, I went to private schools myself. I went to Catholic schools. My elementary school, looking back now, I don't think was the best in the world. I might have been better off going to the public school. I'm from Brooklyn.
Okay.
I might have been better off going to the public school. I got through it. Okay. Then I went to a superb high school. I went to Zavarian High School, a Catholic school out in Brooklyn. And you could see that, I went in at, they had classes. They graded classes A, B, C, D, E, F. You weren't supposed to know what they were, but you knew if you were in class F, you were not in the top class. I went into class, I think I started in E.
Right.
And the next year I was in C. That's why I'm saying my elementary school was not necessarily
Right.
the best. I graduated, I was in class A.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
because I benefited by Zavarian's teaching,
Right.
and I was able to rise to the. So that's why I'm saying my Catholic school may not have been the best, when I started, but I got through it. It was fine.
Right.
But so private school is not always the best. My parents wanted me to go there because they were Catholic, they were religious, and whatever. Then I went to Zavarian. Then from Zavarian I went to Fordham, and then from Fordham I went to NYU. So I definitely benefited by a good schooling, and so I'm for you got to have a good basic education. I think the mayor of the city of New York is 100% correct. You start as early as you could possibly get.
Right. That's we have to invest early.
If you want to get 3-year-olds into school, that's fine, because not every parent is home with the kid. Not every parent is equipped to teach the kid what's got to be taught.
Real quick, I want to. We got a couple of people on the check-in, but one person in particular that's from your region said that they were embarrassed that they didn't even know who you were, and they're from your district. That's what made me ask
that's why
about.
we got the
That's
show.
why you need to come here. Yeah.
There you go.
Shout out to Kenneth Chamberlain Jr., Chris Ali, Tasha Young, Dawn R. Short, Omi Medina, who gave us a shout out.
All right.
Tasha D. Wilson said good evening, Damon, AJ Lorraine, Emaine, and Mike Jackson, and a couple other people. But I was just saying that like a lot of people don't know what because you know what.
Look, I will tell you, we just did four mailings to the district. Well, we're in the process of doing the last one now. So we've done 3 mailings to the district. Okay, and I held 2 town hall meetings, one at the Greenberg Library, one at the Pleasantville Library. I do the same thing every year. I've been in office. I was county legislator for Greenberg for 19 years. I sent out newsletters there. So I've been on the ballot 20 times.
Ooh,
Tasha.
Tasha.
See, I didn't call her out. See, I said somebody, but you know, I'm familiar with you because we were actually on Bob Marone's show the same day.
Yes, you understand. I make a lot of noise, right?
Yeah. So
I'm not a wallflower.
So I
make a lot of noise.
That's how I was familiar with.
Right.
You know, and only because of that, because I'm always listening. And
but I understand.
We were actually on the same day.
People have to live their lives, and they don't understand that government is important. They don't pay it. You know, they got their own things to worry about. They got a family to raise. They got a job to go to. They got whatever it is they've got to do. And this goes back to where you and I started, you know? I mean, on the one hand, we politicians have to reach out. But on the other hand, the population has to be educated enough to accept our reaching out and to reach out to us.
Right.
So, but anyway, to finish up where we
that's
were.
That's another vote for you.
No, thanks. Oh, hello. Thank you. You know, you can't do everything for votes. You got to do it. You got to do what's right. But I appreciate. I really appreciate her
there you go.
Of participating.
Yeah.
See, there's so many different ways to participate.
Right.
And in this modern age, that's what won in Alabama.
Yeah.
You know, people talking
definitely.
to people, whether it's through Facebook, whatever it is. But we were talking about, so what does the state do and how does the budget work?
Right.
There's an example. What I was coming to was, all right, so we've got to decide. How much money are we going to give to charter schools? How much are we going to put into the Foundation Aid formula? How much are we going to do all these other special things? And we say to our speaker, okay, this is where we as a Democratic conference come to a conclusion. Or he goes around the room, he listens to us, okay? And he gets the sense, well, there's a handful of Democrats who like charter schools. Interestingly, from some of the minority communities in New York City.
Yeah, well,
they're feeling this is the only way their kids are going to get an education,
absolutely.
whatever. But by and large, most of the Democrats are saying, no, we want the money to go into the public schools.
Right.
And so now we send him back. And he goes back into that room with the governor and the head of the Senate, you know, the 3 men in the room, that famous thing. But let's face it, how else do you negotiate? You can't have 213 of us in a room.
Right.
You know, you gotta choose some people and send them in. Now, could we have a little bit of a better system where there's more people involved? I think we could. But that's another discussion. So the assembly leadership goes in, the Senate leadership goes in, the governor's there, and now they fight over this. The Senate leadership's going to come in and say, we want more money for the suburbs. We want more money for our rural areas. These schools need it more. They're farther away, et cetera, et cetera. And so then they hash it out and they come to a compromise. Fortunately, so far, we've been able to come to a compromise in a reasonable time period. Since I've been up there, and I give the governor credit for this, he set as one of his goals an on-time budget. And we've done it every year. Last year we were 10 days late, but that's, you know, you're not talking a lot of time here. That's okay. So it's pretty much on time, and so we've had an orderly process. But that's what the budget's all about, and it funds everything. It funds the entire state. There's no money that is not funded through the budget, except. But I'll come to the exception in a minute.
Go ahead.
And so that's why we pass a budget. The exception is, we have a second state government in agencies. Somebody somewhere along the way, and you have the same thing in the federal government, came up with the idea of having the Thruway Authority and the MTA and you name it, it's out there, right?
Right.
They're all appointed by the governor. Their monies, some of them come from the state budget, and some of them come from other areas. You know, you got the tolls coming in. Those tolls don't come to the state of New York. They go to the Thruway Authority.
Okay.
And so they've got their own budget out there. And we don't pass on that budget. Now, my predecessor, Richard Brodsky, made a big deal out of this, managed to pass some legislation to try to get a handle on it. He was 100% correct. But it hasn't solved the problem. You know, it's an unaccountable government.
Wow, really?
It's an unaccountable government. It's accountable over to... That's why I said the governor is a very strong position.
Right.
Because he's got all of these people that he appoints, and in most cases, we don't have any say at all. So when you hear all these complaints about the MTA, all right, the governor was correct in taking praise for building the 2nd Avenue subway. But he's also to blame when the MTA isn't functioning right and our subway system isn't working.
Right.
Because it's his appointees who are running that.
Right. Right.
And if it's not working, then you ought to be talking to your appointees to find out why it's not working and what we've got to do about it. So it's a very complex system, and I understand why a lot of people don't get it. But the basic concept is they've got to educate themselves because it affects them.
Right.
So the budget, we dealt with the budget. What other things does an assemblyman handle?
Okay, so we have legislation, for example, raise the age of criminal responsibility is something that a lot of people really care about. For some reason, New York State was one of 2 states in the country that held people responsible as adults in the criminal system when they were 16. So that means you had young kids, not fully formed yet, right, who would get arrested and thrown into the county jail along with seasoned, hardened criminals. And that's just not the way we want our society to work. 1, from the point of view of society, and 2, from the point of view of the kids. So what we did, we actually made this part of the budget, but it should not have been part of the budget. It should have been a separate bill. But we deal with issues like this. So we were successful. In this case, the Senate was a problem. Because basically, what I see is they were using this as a bargaining chip.
Right, because
they wanted certain things, and they were going to hold this up until they got what they wanted.
George Latimer was supposed to be on the show at that time when they ended up the stay over.
Yep.
Yeah, so then he had to cancel the show and come on another time.
So we fortunately did it.
Right.
But not as much as we would like.
Right.
But we got it done at least, and now we're starting that process. And look, the transition is going to be a problem. Yeah. The transition. But every other state in the country makes it work. We can make it work. Yeah. Right now, we don't have facilities for these young kids. Where are they going to go? Well, the county's going to have to figure out a place. Fortunately, and I say fortunately, George Latimer is the new county executive. I think he's going to be much more sympathetic to this approach.
Absolutely.
And now he's going to have to figure out, how do we do this? Where does he get the money? So we deal with issues like that. We deal with health issues.
Speaking of health, can I ask you, how's the opiate epidemic in your district? Do you have one?
We have an opiate epidemic everywhere.
But how's it in your district specifically?
Well, I think we've got a problem.
Yeah.
I don't have numbers in my district, but it's not all out.
I give you props for admitting there's a problem, because some people I don't care what I ask them, those problems don't exist in their district. Poverty don't exist in their district. Homelessness is not in their district. Opiate is not in their district.
It's everywhere.
No matter what I ask, it's not in their district.
It's everywhere. We've got to be honest about it. It's everywhere. One of the reasons it got so much attention is because it's no longer just in the minority community.
Of course, like everything else.
And now all of a sudden, there are people who are saying, "Oh, wow, we just discovered this."
Yeah.
No, you didn't just discover it. It's been there
like
a
every
long,
other
long
war
time.
on drugs, like crack and everything else.
Exactly.
When the senator's kid got cracked out, then it was like, "Oh, war on drugs, war on." Yeah.
Exactly, and that's what's happened here. Although I think it probably is a broader problem affecting more people today than ever before, but now it's hit the other communities. And so, now it's getting the attention that it's deserved all along. And I'm not versed well enough to know the different types of drugs and what's affecting who where. But we just have far, far too many people. Look, one person dying of an overdose is one too many.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And right now it seems to be affecting just so many people. And it creates an underground economy, selling drugs, which is not what we want. And I think we're getting distracted look at the guys in Washington. What do they want to do? They want to start the war on marijuana again.
Yeah, right.
That's not the problem. Okay? The problem is the drug companies who are pushing pills.
Right.
You go on TV, and all you see is, ask your doctor if this is appropriate for you. Well, you know the doctor knows what's appropriate and isn't appropriate. Why are these guys advertising on TV and making it acceptable to take drugs? Drugs should be a last resort. Pharmaceuticals should be a last resort in my mind.
I was reading a lot of the kids, especially in the suburbs, are getting them from their mother and father's medicine cabinet.
Right, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, even when they finish it and they still left, they don't throw the bottle away. And the bottle's
I
still
had a
sitting
knee
in there.
operation. The first thing they did was give me something, and then they gave me a prescription for something stronger.
Right.
And I said, "What is this? I don't need this." And they said, "Well, just in case you need, it's going to hurt." So I went home. I took Motrin.
They gave
You know, I took lots of Motrin for a day, and then I took less Motrin the next day, and I never opened up. I don't want these drugs,
Right.
and so it's sitting there in the medicine chest. What do I do with it?
Right, and then they give you stuff that
I
it
never used the
only
prescription.
masks the situation. It doesn't help the situation.
Right.
Like, my blood pressure is a little high, so they gave me an additional blood pressure medicine that set off gout in my foot.
Oh.
Like, you know what I'm saying? And it wasn't like a 3-day thing. It was like, for a month, it was just like one flare-up after a flare-up after a flare-up.
Created another problem.
Right, so I stopped taking it all together. You know what I'm saying? I was like, yo, you're going to have to, so the foot doctor's telling me, your doctor should have known, you know what I'm saying, when he subscribed it, because he knew you
Right.
had that, and he should have known that this is no good. Had I not gone to the foot doctor, I would never have known that my, primary care physician was giving me something that was setting something else off.
Right. Well, we're too dependent on drugs, and now we're seeing the result of that. But I think we've made it acceptable for people to take drugs, so kids are kind of brought up. They see it on TV. They hear, like what you just said, the story you just told.
They
the story
see it
I
in the
told.
store when they go buy a candy. The person behind the counter is falling asleep or all messed up. I mean, I've been watching Facebook posts all weekend about that.
Right.
Hey, Chris Rock said in an HBO special, he said the government doesn't want you to use your drugs. They want you to take their drugs.
Right.
Yeah, so they don't want you
Oh.
marijuana and all that. They want you to
Well, sure, think about
take
it.
their drugs. Yeah.
Marijuana would be legal everywhere if the pharmaceutical companies controlled it.
Right.
Right.
Oh.
If they were making
Wow.
money on it.
Absolutely.
They were making.
Yeah.
Why is
Absolutely.
solar energy not a big thing? Because the big oil companies are not, the big energy companies are not making money on it.
Right.
If they were making money on it, then you'd see. It's really sad. I hate to sound so cynical, but I see the influence of money.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
You know,
It's
another thing about
everywhere.
solar, I sat through a solar conference, and they were doing it in the neighborhoods. They were putting it on your house free if you were
Right.
the people's bills went down so low that they were actually getting. Not only they were getting a check from the energy company too.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They was getting a check back from the energy company.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Which I'm sure they don't want to.
Exactly. But it's the same thing with drugs. Look, I'm not a marijuana person. I, never smoked marijuana, or maybe once when I was a
Did you
kid.
inhale?
I don't think I did. I didn't like it. I think that was the problem. I didn't inhale. But so I'm not into marijuana.
Right.
But what I've seen and heard, what made me an advocate for this was I went to a press conference. I'm a liberal. I'm a progressive. So I'm naturally in favor of these types of different treatments. So I went to a press conference on behalf of a bill to make medical marijuana legal. And when I got there, I met a whole bunch of parents with their little kids who have all of these conditions that you can't imagine.
That's right.
Okay? And the mothers were talking about how the drugs were worse than the conditions.
Right.
Because the end result for these kids was that they were having other problems, just like you
Right,
said.
right,
Okay?
right.
But with these kids, they were really serious problems. On the other hand, they were comparing those kids' conditions with the conditions of kids in other states that had made medical marijuana legal. And these mothers were talking about moving to Colorado, moving to other states.
And it was in pill form too for the kids.
Exactly.
It was in pill form. Yeah.
Sure, pill form or
Yeah,
oil
yeah,
form.
yeah.
And so, or a liquid form so they
Right,
could put it
right.
in the formula.
Right.
And you just look at this and you say, this stuff works? If it works and it doesn't have the side effects, why aren't we using it?
Do you ever think, most people don't, the side effect thing that they give you, if you read the side effects
yeah, sure.
of the pills you take, they say stuff like, in rare occasions, cause suicide,
Yeah,
suicidal thoughts,
Depression, all kinds of stuff.
depression, impotency. Like, yo, who the hell want to take any of this?
Exactly.
Like, yo,
Exactly.
I'll deal with what I got. Like, you know what I'm
And
saying?
so, what's the problem with marijuana? There's this image out there that it's this illicit drug that, you know, from what I've read and heard, it doesn't create any of the side of. We have legal alcohol, right? You can drink.
And alcohol has more problems than
Exactly. It
Right,
has all
yeah.
kinds of causes all kinds of problems. People get addicted to it. You know, you get drunken driving. You have all kinds of problems, physical problems from people drinking too much. I haven't heard about the same kinds of situations with people using marijuana.
If anything, they driving a little slower.
Well, yeah, maybe. Well, look, you're right.
They're not driving faster. They sit at the corner a little extra to make sure there's no cars coming. You know.
You're right.
Like, you
You're
know.
right. That's true. But we should be looking at this seriously, and rather than it being a cause for arresting people. Now, we've managed to diminish the penalties for possession of marijuana, but it's still an excuse to stop people.
Right. Now, where is New York on making it legal?
Well, I think it would probably pass the New York State Assembly. Probably close, but it would pass.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where it goes in the Senate.
Even with all the tax money that.
Oh,
See,
yeah.
and that's what they
I
say.
would thought that New York would have once they saw all the tax dollars
'Cause Colorado and
Colorado was
Washington,
making.
Their first month.
I
agree
said
with
New
you.
York is
we have,
just
we
around
have a
the corner.
governor who's very conservative. Okay, very conservative. He says he's a progressive, but he's very conservative.
right.
If you take a look at the medical marijuana situation, the companies that are in this, I think there's only 4 companies now that have been authorized, and with only that few they're still having problems because so few conditions are allowed to be treated in New York by medical marijuana, and there's so few doctors that have gotten it. There's still this stigma about using marijuana that we have to erase. Now, I think it's going away with the younger generation. They kind of look, but the old timers, they look at marijuana as some illicit drug, and yet they're the ones who are on the pills.
Right.
And they're the ones that were using it in the 60s.
Exactly. Well, that's the problem. They see it as a recreational way of,
Right.
And I think you're 100% correct. And so there's a fear that they're not understanding that this is now not everybody's going to be smoking it with medical.
Right.
That it comes in a pill form. It comes in a
Because they tried that in New York like 2, 3, 4 years ago, approving the pill form.
They,
Right.
they
Well,
do have it in
they
pill
did
form.
pass
it. It's approved in
I've been
pill?
prescribed.
Okay.
Yeah, it's approved in pills.
Okay,
It's
I
also
didn't
approved
know.
I think in a liquid.
liquid.
Yeah.
But the other thing about the
But you need a prescription for it. You need
Right,
a
you have to
prescription
have
for
it.
it, and only for certain conditions.
The other thing about legalizing it until the government legalizes it, the problem in Colorado and Washington, the banks can't keep the money because the
Well-
banks are federal. Like, so they can't put the money. So now they got to find other
Yeah,
things
but
to
the
do with
state
money.
ain't worried about that. The state's getting those tax dollars.
They're getting the tax
At
dollars.
the end of the day,
And
that's
he's
Right,
what-
he's right.
Right, no, yeah.
Financing a business is a
Right.
problem.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
basically what you're talking about is people have money can get more money.
Right. So
They
now
They want to be
Right,
entrepreneurs,
but they
can't
were-
open up a
Right.
business.
But they were
Right.
talking about the other jobs that was opening. Like now there's private security and those lots of private security. There's one guy who walks around. I want his job. I forgot he gets paid like $100,000 or something crazy. He walks through. He measures the height of them. He measures the distance between the growing plants. And he either writes a ticket or he lets it go, and he goes to the next place. Like that's all this dude does.
He works for the state.
Yeah, but he for the medical marijuana because they have
strict.
restrictions
guidelines.
on how far away it has to be and how tall it can be and all that kind of stuff. And that's all he does. He just measures this and measures that, and he goes to the next place. I'm like,
Now,
wow.
some of the other issues, one of the issues that we started talking about before is we control the government system. One of the issues that you expressed an interest in was, Damon, was we allow the commissioner of elections and the head of the
yeah.
party. This was an issue that you wanted to talk about. But we deal with stuff like that. That's what the state legislature, we deal
And
with
how is that
every
going?
aspect of life.
You actually put now
He
you
said,
actually
"How is
try
that
to put
going?"
some legislation through or something, right?
Well, yes, I have a bill, and it's not targeted at any. I know
Right, absolutely.
The two commissioners in Westchester I know pretty well. They're nice guys. They're commissioners of elections, and they're both the heads of their respective parties. I have always thought that was a conflict of interest because there's a difference. Look, I was a Democratic Party official in the town of Greenburgh. I was like the vice chair of the Greenburgh Democratic Party many, many years ago. I got elected to the town board. I gave up my position as vice chair. Then I got elected to the county legislature, and I gave up my position of district leader, like a county committeeman, which is the basic.
Right.
The people who make up the party.
Right.
They go to the conventions and stuff. Because my feeling was I can't represent both. Now, is it possible to do both? Yes, it is.
Some do.
Some do. And,
Some do.
But it's very difficult to take both those. You know, like George Latimer, for example, was chair of the party when he was a county legislator, and I think George separated the two jobs very well and did them both. And he brought his political experience into the position of chair of the party. And if somebody said to me, hey, do you want to be chair of the party for a couple of years, I might say, you know what, I think the party should be going in a different direction. I might be willing to do that if you, but I don't think you should be a long-term chair if your interest is in another area.
Well, I mean, my problem with the whole board of election thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, so if I'm running for office or I have any kind of a problem, and I'm having a problem with the chair, the city chair or the county chair, I would then go to the board of election. So how am I going to tell Doug Colte or Reggie Lafayette on themselves?
Exactly.
Like,
I've gone to Reggie several times, kidding him and saying, "Hey, Reggie, I want to talk to the chair of the party. I want you to go talk to the commissioner of elections and tell him I don't like this." Now, Reggie and I have this thing. He understands what I'm saying. I'm not saying anything I didn't say
No,
publicly.
I've said this to him publicly too.
But we all said this.
Yeah.
But he's in kind of, especially the two jobs that he's got. And those seem to be the two.
Well, he got
jobs that-
three because he's Mount Vernon chair too.
He's a
So
city
city
committee
chair,
Right.
county
But
chair.
it's almost an
and-
impossible situation
Right.
because sometimes you got to make a decision for the public good, which is not good for the party. Or
Right.
you have to make a decision for the party, which is not good for the public.
Right.
Right.
We understand that.
Right.
You know, I mean, I'm in the state legislature, okay? There are a lot of state legislators who are party chairs. And sometimes you have to do one or the other, and you got to separate the two. But it's a little different there because the decisions you're making are on behalf of your constituency, and you can say that. And then you can go back to being party chair. Like the Democratic Party may take the position of, let's say, okay, we want a certain amount of money for whatever. And now as an assembly member, you know what? We come to budget time, I got to negotiate. I may have to vote for less money than my party has said.
Right.
But that's clear.
Right.
On the other hand, when you're dealing with an election, who's going to be an advocate for the candidates other than the party chair? And the party, now the commissioner of elections, he's got to make decisions. He may disagree with what the party's position is. So there's a direct conflict right there.
Right.
Okay? I mean, somebody's got to bring the appeal.
Right.
And candidates can't always afford to bring an appeal.
Right.
If let's assume you're in Yonkers and you've got an election, and your Democratic candidate loses by 2 votes. Well, that candidate may not have the money to go to court, so turns to the party chair in Yonkers and says, "Hey, can you help me out here? You know, I want to be the county legislator, but I lost by 2 votes. You know, you were helping me during the campaign. Can you afford to put up?" So now that Democratic Party chair in Yonkers is going to say, "Okay, fine, let's bring a lawsuit against the Board of Elections." But if the Democratic Party chair of Yonkers is also the chair of the county and is also the commissioner of elections, he can't sue himself.
Right. Right.
We have a
So, you know,
Okay,
it's just an inherent conflict of interest. It's not a criticism of these two people in office. It's just very difficult to take on. And so people in the party feel, and I've heard this from both parties, we don't have an advocate out there.
Right. Right.
I, 2 things. Happy birthday to Monique James. It was actually yesterday. She was tuned in.
Happy birthday, Monique.
And Maximo Palenko
Yeah, Maximo.
said, "What do you think about the Cobra contract?"
Oh, me? He can't. No, he's state.
He can't. Oh, he's okay.
Yeah, that doesn't
Okay,
have-
I just.
Nah, he's not a county legislator. He
Okay.
was a county legislator.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
I'm
he's
not
not a
familiar
county-
with what that
Okay.
But Max, it sucks. I'm voting no.
Okay.
Monday.
Cat Bresler.
you
Shout to Cat Bresler. She's tuned in.
Hey,
and
Cat.
Russo.
I just left Cat in White Plains. Hello there, Cat. How are you?
Montika Jones.
Oh, the wife. Hey,
Uncle
baby.
Frank. Monty Whitaker from Baltimore. There's a couple other people. Felicia, we met her yesterday at Andre's thing.
Hey, Felicia.
That was it. I think that was it. I think I named everybody. Yeah. So
I have a question.
yeah,
Go ahead.
absolutely.
Well, you mentioned Latimer, and somebody just mentioned Kay. Between Kay, Shelley, Mike, or someone else.
I'm not going to choose it. I'm not going to choose us.
He said, I'm not doing that.
I think we'd be well served with all of them.
Cat said hi. We said hi back to us.
I think everyone.
I try to get him to say you, Cat.
Max said,
No, I'm just
"Oh
kidding.
hell no, yeah, I am voting no."
Yeah, yeah, that's good. How is the tax bill down in D.C.? How is that?
I'm not even sure what's in that tax bill. I've been reading the New York Times and elsewhere.
Right, there's been a lot of press conference. De Blasio, even the governor. But how, for the people that haven't seen it, or even talked about it, how is that going to affect New York? Because they said New York will be getting hit very hard if this passed. I just
one of the events I was at today was with Congressman Elliot Engel, and he says they haven't seen the bill yet. The Democrats
Really?
have not been given a copy of the bill yet. They've only seen summaries, and they're going to try to pass it this week. So clearly they're ashamed of what's in that bill.
Right.
That this is not, But from what I've read, look. First of all, I think this tax bill is an abdication of the responsibility of the federal government to maintain a balance of power between the federal government and the state governments. We started off, I said, these United States. I've never been a big states' rights advocate because usually states' rights has been used to cover policies, to allow policies that I disagreed with. But I do believe the states have a right to exist and a right to fund themselves. There was a time when the federal tax, the top tax bracket, was 90%. That's when Eisenhower, when the Republicans were in charge. Think about that.
Right.
Okay? 90%. Well, if you are to tax at 90%, there's nothing left for the states to tax if you don't allow them to tax the dollars first.
Right.
Right? Because the highest in New York, I think our highest tax rate's like 7 or 9% or something like that. But if you're in that tax bracket where you're taxed at, let's say, 9%, and the feds take 90%, you have nothing left to live on, even if you make $3 billion a year.
Right.
Well, not
right.
$3 billion,
right.
but you understand what I'm saying. If you're making a few $100,000 a year and you're in that top tax bracket, probably over $1 million or $3 million or something, but doesn't leave you an awful lot, considering you're making a lot of money.
Right.
So I think by logic and by the whole concept of this country, the states have the right to tax first, and the monies that they take can't be taxed again by the federal government. I think it's a basic right of the states to take that money first, untaxed. And I think that's been understood since 1913 when the income tax was first passed. And I think it's been part of our basic system all these years. And nobody has tried to change that or try to abrogate that agreement until we come across this group down in Washington right now.
Right.
They just have no respect for anything.
Right.
So that's my initial statement. The second one, this looks like it's a mean-spirited attempt at vengeance against those states that have succeeded economically and socially, because it's designed to take money away from the states that are more expensive, and the states that are more expensive are clearly the states that have succeeded economically. Right? I mean, we don't tax a lot here because we want to tax a lot here. We tax a lot because it's expensive to be here.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
You go somewhere else and you can buy a teacher for $25,000, $30,000 a year.
Right.
You can't have a teacher live anywhere in this area.
No.
Okay? And take the poorest part of Westchester.
Right.
You can't get an apartment if you're making $25,000 a year.
Right.
You just can't do it.
Right.
And so you've got to pay. What's a starting teacher get? $60,000, $70,000 a year? You know, a starting police officer will get somewhere in that. Right. I mean, you take all of these positions that we need to run daily life, and we got to pay a lot of money because they can't afford to live here otherwise. You got people who are commuting down from Dutchess County, coming in from wherever every day because they can't afford to live here.
It's expensive in Westchester.
Yes, and it's even expensive now in Putnam and Dutchess. So, you know, and then you've got to own a car, and a decent car to be able to drive that distance. You got to be able to pay for gas in this area.
Right.
So, and raise a family. So,
Oh my God, you're depressing me.
well,
I'm like, that's me. That's me.
we're all in that situation.
Yeah, we are.
We're
Everybody.
all in that
Yeah,
situation,
that's right.
and we're a victim of our own success. People in New York City have done very, very well in many cases, but so the poverty level is not $30,000; it's $50,000-$60,000.
Right, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
you
That's
can't
right.
you can't raise it's very difficult to raise a family of, let's say, 4 on that kind of money. Not to mention the poverty level. So we have succeeded as a community. The state of New York, Connecticut, whatever. By and large, we have a high standard of living. So therefore, our taxes will match the standard of living.
Right.
And now they're saying, because you've done well, we're going to penalize you. Okay? We're not going to allow you to deduct from the federal tax
Wow.
all of your other costs. All right? Your costs for mortgage, your costs for taxes.
That's
and
going to hurt a lot of people.
Yes, it is. It's going to hurt a lot.
of people.
And because we care, we spend a lot of money on taking care of people. Unlike the federal government, or the new approach, which is basically everybody, you're on your own.
Right.
Okay? Somehow, by giving more money to the Trumps of the world, we are going to raise everybody up, and they're going to get new jobs. Well, if anybody's been watching Trump, the way he runs the government is the way he ran his businesses. He
Right.
said, I'm going to run
Absolutely.
government like business. Well, guess
Yeah,
what?
right.
He's screwing people.
And he's running it into the ground.
He's running them
And how many
into-
times he went bankrupt? Yeah.
Right. And that's-
Exactly. And
right.
he's trying to do the same thing to the states.
I want. You got actually 2 questions. I was told to ask you, Kate Bressler, so to ask you how you how you feel about a New York Reserve Bank that could be separate from a federal, so that it wouldn't have a banking system that would support legalized marijuana. And the second question was from her: why is it okay for rich states to pay more to the federal government but not billionaires?
Let's take the second. That's a good point. There are some billionaires who have more money than some of our states. If you look at it. So I don't think it's okay. I think the implication of that question was, hey, guys in Washington, what are you doing?
Right.
And I agree with her on that point. The first part of the question, though, is why do rich states pay so much? Is because we have always believed that if you have more, you give more. And
Unless you're a private citizen.
huh?
Unless you're a billionaire.
Well, that's the way it's going now,
Right.
yes. But in the past, we always believed that the rich gave more. Like I said, under Eisenhower, the top tax rate was 90%. When you got up to a certain level, I don't know at what point, but the top tax bracket. So everybody pays, let's say, 7% of their first $10,000 or so. And then, the next one, then from it's probably more than that. Now, I saw it this morning, but let's assume you pay 3% of your first $10,000, and then you pay 4% of your next $10,000, and 5% of your next $10,000. But when you finally get up to your second million, you pay 90%. That's the way it was way back in the Eisenhower years, because they're figuring people were doing, once you get up to that amount,
You're doing pretty good.
exactly,
Right.
yeah, exactly. And so now the top tax bracket, they want to reduce it down to what, 31%? So your second billion, you're going to pay 31%.
That's Bill Gates wrote that letter saying that his receptionists pay a higher tax bracket than he does.
Exactly. And if you
Wow.
take a look at the
That's
percentage.
a damn shame. When you think about that, he can't be paying her but so much. You know what I'm saying? He's
Right.
a billionaire.
Well,
So,
I think what he was saying was she was paying more. I think it was Warren Buffett.
It
who
was
said
Buffett.
it.
Oh, Warren
It was
Buffett. I'm sorry,
But
wrong
what
name.
he
but
was
yes.
saying was as a percentage
Right, the percentage
of
of
what
it. Yeah,
she
right.
was taking.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Making.
Right.
She was paying a greater percentage of her take
Right,
home
right.
than he was.
Right.
And he could certainly afford it. Now, why should the rich pay more than the poor? Well, because if you're poor or even middle class, you're using all of your money just to get by.
Right.
When you're rich, you take care of getting by, then you have a lot of money left over. And that's what you should be sharing with the rest of the community. Plus, I always say to people, you're doing well because of the community. You're
Right.
not making this money by yourself.
Right.
You're making this money
Off the
because
back of somebody here.
yeah, but somebody's buying your product
Right.
or buying your idea.
Right.
Somebody is doing things for you. They're working for you to help you make that money. So you've got an interest in making sure that our society functions well. You don't want people who are starving out on your front doorstep. You don't want poor people out on your front doorstep who are starving. You want everybody to be doing well, because your product will be able to. Was it Ford that said that he wanted all of his employees to be able to buy one of his cars?
Right.
Because he understood that the more people could afford, the more cars he could sell.
Right.
Why does that still not make sense?
When I came back from Atlanta, 2014, and when I first started the show, I used to say this all the time. Two of the biggest employers are Walmart and McDonald's, and 75% of those people who work for those two companies are on some kind of Section 8 food stamps or something because they can't make it.
So government is subsidizing our two biggest employers in this country. They're providing.
Well, at least in
healthcare.
Atlanta, I don't know in the country, but
it's everywhere in the country. Everywhere in the country. Walmart. I mean, that was a whole big issue in White Plains when they wanted to move into White Plains. The argument against it was, why are we paying their employees social services? Why aren't they paying their own employees enough money and giving them health care so the government doesn't have to do that for them?
Right.
Why are we subsidizing that business? So
everybody, because and I'm talking about there was a couple of managers. I'm not even talking about the regular workers. There's a few managers that were.
Oh, sure. They don't get paid that much either.
They get Section 8 and food stamps.
They don't get paid that much either.
Yeah.
We have a lot of correctional officers that watch the show, and when Maximo brought up the contract, it made me think about something. A lot of the arguments between the officers is the difference between the tiers. Can you explain? I think we are tier 6 now. We're up to 6, right? Right.
I still don't know what that means.
Right. Can you explain the tier system and how did we get to 6?
I'll try. Conceptually,
because a lot of them thinking it's tied into the contract and has something to do with but it doesn't.
No.
And I just want so they can have a clarity, on where they're at.
Somewhere along the way, the state decided they were going to give employees benefits, and they called it a tier 1.
Right.
Okay, and it lasted for a long, long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And then we hit the first recession, I guess, or whatever, downturn. And they said, you know what, we ought to change this. So they came up with tier 2. And then they decided, that's too expensive, so now we should change it again. So anybody who is going to be hired from this day forward is going to be in tier 3. Okay, and then tier 4. And we keep doing it. And this governor, brought in tier 6.
Right.
And it's really, I think, unfair because 3 people are sitting next to each other. They're working on the computer together. They're doing the same job. And you were here the longest. So you're under tier 1. I'm under tier 3. She's under tier 6. You retire and you get full health benefits. You don't pay anything. I retire. I pay a little bit towards this or that. She retires. She gets almost nothing.
Right.
That's not fair because we're doing the same job.
It's fair to me.
They got you got 3 comments on that. Maximo said Astorino was a person on a mission to give our department a hard ride for what we earned. He was the only county. Oh, he was only for county PD, not for us. I wish him a great trip out of the country. D. Wilson.
Out of the country. Don't send him away.
D. Wilson said, Damon, y'all have tier 6? Damn, when I was at New York City DOC, we had tier 1 and 2. And Kate Bresson said, what are the benefits of defined benefits versus pension?
Oh, that's a whole other issue. We'll get to that in a second. But I think you had a comment on.
No.
She likes Astorino.
Rob's view of government was the less government, the better. Let's do away with it. His only mission was to cut taxes, and he did it any way he could. That's my view.
I love Rob.
Okay.
I love Rob.
All right. Bye.
And I wish him well.
Yes. Yeah.
I wish him well. And don't leave the country.
But
don't leave the country.
In the future, moving forward, because now you have a tier 6, the overtime they make is not pensionable.
That was another change that was done. Yeah,
right.
I'm not sure about the details of each one.
Right. But basically, from my understanding, the overtime is not pensionable. So now if you have
Wow, it's not.
You have an officer that No, it's not. You have an officer that's working. Let's say he makes 100,000, ends up making 120,000. He retires at 60,000. Now you have a whole group of workers that basically can't live when they retire if they don't finance correctly. Don't invest and take that overtime that they will make while working, invest it in deferred comp or whatever. You're looking at a whole generation that will probably leave New York.
Well, one of the arguments for the overtime being compensable in retirement was that you're trying to incentivize people to do overtime. That overtime alone is not enough because they're leaving their families, they're tired, and they're working. So you don't want to pay me overtime? Well, then go hire somebody else.
Right.
And you'd have to hire somebody else for whom you'd have to pay pension costs.
Right.
So it's cheaper to pay if you
to hire overtime.
To hire overtime. And that's why the governments do it, because I remember as a county legislator, they gave us the numbers, and up to a certain point, it's cheaper to hire one person and give him overtime than to hire two people.
Right, with health care and all that other that goes along.
Correct. And so the question becomes, at what point what's the tipping point?
Okay.
How many people do you give overtime to, and for how long, before it no longer is economically beneficial and now you have to hire another person?
Right.
And that's up to the guys in the finance department to figure out. But Rob's view, I think, basically was he wants to do away with county government. And philosophically, I very much disagree with him.
He almost did.
Well, look, I am told that the planning department, for example, when I left it 7 years ago, had 35 people. Now it's got 21 or 22 people or something like that.
Right.
And, I think that's penny wise and pound foolish, because a planning department can be very helpful, one, in settling disputes between different municipalities. Yonkers wants to build right on the border with Greenberg. Well, somebody's got to give us a view, an objective view, and say that's a good idea or a bad idea. The Yonkers people are going to say it's good. The Greenberg people are going to say it's bad. Somebody's got to take a regional view. Plus, you've got small municipalities that can't afford to hire their own. They don't have their own planning department. And you want somebody who's going to give you an honest perspective from the regional point of view. You want to be able to go to them and say, what do you think about this project? What do you have? Do you recommend certain consultants? Can you give us some statistics and background and whatever else has to be done? That's worth its weight in gold. And if you don't have a county planning department, there was a point when I was on the Board of Legislators, we were trying to strengthen the county planning department and let the county planning board actually make decisions to resolve disputes between communities so that you didn't have lawsuits between communities. Because every community sues its neighbor over something. Maybe that's too broad a generalization.
Right.
But it's
it's happened.
Pelham sued over the Mount Vernon wanted to put in a shopping center. Tarrytown has sued Sleepy Hollow because of the way they're developing the waterfront. Greenberg and Yonkers were involved over. Everywhere you go, there's a dispute because it always helps one community and hurts another. So you try to use the county however you can with objective standards, planning board, people in the department. There's an example of why you need the county planning department. And as you go down all of the other departments, I really believe, having been a county legislator for 19 years, that using a stronger county government is better policy and saves people money. When you go out throughout this country, there's actually three different forms of government. Everybody to the west of us has county government providing almost all of the services. They do schools, they do everything else. And they may have some cities. You go to New England and you have the local town form of government. You come to us and a few states around us, we have both. So we have the conflict. That's why we have so much government. But you go up to Vermont or whatever, they have a town form of government. People actually get together once a year and they vote. And they have selectmen who then carry out the policies for the rest of the year. and like I said, out in the Midwest and the West, I mean, Los Angeles County and Los Angeles City, I mean, they're both huge, and they're two separate governments. But it's a good example of where there's a county government there.
Right. Right.
Okay, and outside
they're
of the
doing
city
well.
of and outside of the city of Los Angeles, you don't have any other municipalities. You have the county of Los Angeles, and they run it. So we have both, and I think at this time, we should be moving to a stronger county government. Doesn't mean we're going to abolish villages. It's just not going to happen. Right. People like their own little governments. Too late now to do that. But
there once was a move to do. There once.
Yes.
Who was it?
The governor. The governor, as the attorney general, he got the state legislature to change the law, pass legislation to make it easier to consolidate.
Right. Right, but who was it locally was trying to get rid of the county government?
Oh, Paul
was
Feiner.
It Feiner? Yeah.
When he was a county legislator. It was Paul Feiner.
He comes on the show a lot.
That's Paul, yes.
Yeah, Paul.
Well, I think that
I knew it was somebody.
But look, one of the supervisors gave me the idea. I think it was a Republican supervisor one time. He said, why doesn't the county just in general take over certain services? For example, sewers. Right now, the county does the county sewers,
right,
and the sewage treatment plants. Sewage treatment plants originally were owned by the cities, and they serviced. And I don't know what the relationship was, but like New Rochelle was in charge of. So now the county does it, and now the county does all the trunk lines. Well, every city, every town, village takes care of the lines within their districts, and that's expensive. Why not the county take it over? Well, politically, somehow we'd have to explain to the public that your county tax bill is going to go up.
Right.
But you also have to explain to them, but you're not going to be paying for it locally.
Right. Right.
And the county could probably do it for what, 75%, 80% of the cost of all of the locals doing it.
Right.
Right.
So, but people are going to say, oh, but my county tax bill is going to go up. Yeah, but it's going to go up less than the money you're going to save locally.
No, locally.
But they don't believe that.
Right.
See, but that, if you want to save money, there's an example of, I think, one area we should look at. And I think there are other things like that.
They tried to, in the one of the Memorial Field negotiations for the county to put up some of the money, it included Mount Vernon taking over some of those streets and stuff that you
exactly.
And Mayor Davis's position, right or wrong, but it was his position, was that the city, it was a bad deal for the city, and the city couldn't afford to take over those streets.
Right.
You know, and that was part of.
Well, I
the
was
with
there
Memorial
with the
Field.
county executive. Andy Spano was spinning off roads to the local governments. And I understand why he was trying to do that. But at the same time, I thought we were going the wrong way. Now, I supported him. He was the county executive. He wanted to do this. This was his approach. But I think we should have been going the other way. We should be taking over the roads. Now, that's a major undertaking, right? But that's expensive for the small communities.
Right.
Now, there are some communities like a Yonkers and maybe even a Greenberg that can afford to have a full public works department and can do this efficiently. But when you get down to some of the small communities, you know, this is a major burden for them.
Kate Bressler agrees with you. I completely agree with him about the sewage treatment, and I wish we talked about this much more.
Yeah, but look, it's going to take us. I think that one of the suggestions I'd make to George Latimer is you got to set up a group of people who can get together and talk about how to do this. You know, the governor was trying to push people to do sharing,
right?
And I didn't like the penalties, but the concept of making people talk to each other makes a lot of sense.
Right.
You take a look at town of Greenberg. There are 6 villages. The 6 villages plus the village of Sleepy Hollow, their mayors meet once a month. They have dinner together. Each one of them will, every 6 months, you know, different one, every month, different one hosts dinner. And I've been to a few of their dinners. And they sit down and they talk about, what can we do together?
Right, right.
And there's a representative from the town of Greenberg there as well. What can we do together? And for example, they have done things like, there's some equipment that efficiently patches potholes. So instead of anybody buying this very expensive piece of equipment, they get one contract, and they share it.
That's, yeah.
Okay, so they rotate it, and so I don't know. One of the villages might make the contract, and they subcontract it to the others.
Right.
And so that makes a lot of sense. Now, the city of Yonkers probably buys that equipment for itself because it's big enough.
Right.
But these are 6 villages that have a total of, 50, 60,000 people. And so they're functioning as one. Now, imagine if you could do that on a countywide basis.
Right.
Maybe the county could buy several pieces of that equipment and charge back to the local governments and say, okay, you're going to get it for 1 day a month, and we're going to maintain it. We're going to take care of it. Here's the terms of the deal. And maybe they could do it for less money than, I don't know if you really want to do it on something that small, but that's an example of local governments working together. Why can't you do that on a county level?
They do that in, I lived in Suffolk County. I lived in Central Islip, and it's in the town of Islip. So Central Islip, East Islip, West Islip,
Right.
Brightwaters, and 3 or 4 other ones. They're all the town of Islip. You know what I'm saying? They all function as the town of Islip. Shout out to Barry McGooey and Jeff Red.
Barry, what's happening, Barry? You also, we had posted on Black Westchester that you pushed to make the MTA 24 hours for Grand Central and Metro North. Can you
elaborate on that?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yes, I think it's not a brilliant idea. You know,
Yeah,
it's like,
but I was like, wow.
all you got to do
Someone finally thought to make it 24 hours.
is, you know, you just listen to the kids.
Right.
Okay, I mean, you know, I've got
From what, Grand Central to where?
To Metro North, make Metro North 24 hours.
Grand Central Station closes at 2:00 in
Oh,
the
right,
morning.
right,
Opens
right.
again at 6. Okay.
Right.
You go to Penn Station, it's open 24 hours a day. You
Right.
can take the Long Island Railroad. They've got
Might have to
they've
wait
got-
2 hours. But trains get like 1, 3, and 5 at a certain point, but
Right,
it's still
but,
open.
but
though.
still
Yeah,
a
yeah.
train there.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
a place
yeah,
for you
yeah.
to go sit that's safe
Yeah.
and whatever. Grand Central, the last train I think is 1:55, and then the first one in the morning is 5:55 or something like that. So you got 4 hours in there. What do? You know, there are night people. There are people who work at night.
They say the city that never sleeps, so I mean,
Exactly.
people that
Nice.
Exactly. You know, we've got a lot of young people who work different hours. We've got a lot of old people too who work different hours, right? We got a note from one person who said that he's a contractor. He's got to be in the city at 6:00 every morning to set up for his workers. He's got to take his car. He'd rather take the train. He doesn't need his car. He's just got to get to a
so
location.
now you got to pay for all that parking now too.
Exactly. But he can't. There's no way he can get down there by Metro North.
Right.
Okay. Now, what about all the nurses who have to be at different places? The home care workers, the firemen, the other emergency personnel, and we've got a lot of stuff happening up here now. People have to come up from the city.
Absolutely.
You know, and then just take the social life. I mean, it's for you know, people of my generation. They may want to go to sleep at 10:00, but you know, younger people, and even some from my generation, go down the city. You go down, you know, like you said, the city that never sleeps. You go into a restaurant in Manhattan or whatever, they're open till 11, 12 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock
Right.
in the morning,
Right.
and then there are clubs open until 4.
We would complain going back to Long Island that if you missed the one, you had to wait to 3. You know what I'm saying? And you had to wait to 5. Well, there was a 2-3 hour gap in between.
Westchester.
But now that's worse.
Oh, yeah.
Metro
Oh,
North,
sure.
right. Yeah.
I've seen situations with kids that, you know, I've talked to some young people. They have to spend the night in the city, so they go to a club. They may be done at 2, 3 o'clock. Can't get home unless they drive.
Right.
And of course, they've been drinking. They don't want to drive.
Right.
They're smart enough to say, "I'm not going to drive," and Uber's too expensive
Right.
to come from the city up to
Right.
here. You know, you're talking about people on a limited budget.
No, that was a great when Andrea sent me that. I was like, wow, somebody.
And they're pushing back.
to do it.
They're pushing back, saying, "Well, we got to clean sometime. It's expensive to have more trains." Yeah, we understand that, but if you want a system that works for everybody, then you.
I think a lot of people will use it. You know,
Oh, so
even
do I.
a lot of couples to go out, to go to a concert, to go to certain things that you would get out, go to a concert, have a dinner. You'll be done one. You'll miss that 2 o'clock, that 1:55.
Exactly.
You will do it.
Exactly.
You know, but if it's 24 hours.
I look. I could envision a lot of people. You know, some people work all day in the city,
right.
And the spouse comes down and joins them. They go to a show, okay, and they don't have time for dinner before the show. They want to have dinner after
Right.
the show,
Absolutely.
okay. And now you got to rush to get back there. On the other hand, you could say, you know what? Let's hang out here. We haven't
Right.
done this a long
Yeah,
time.
take your time.
Date night. We're gonna hang out and whatever.
At least if you live in Mount Vernon, then you got to take the subway all the way back home to the last stop, and that's the worst thing in the world on the weekends. Because they doing all kinds of.
Yeah, but
they
then
got
how do you
shuttle
get back
buses.
from the subway?
No, I'm saying with
Well,
Mount Vernon, if you
well,
live
yeah,
if
well,
you live in Mount
subway-
Vernon, I was saying only Mount Vernon. You know,
Right,
like
only
you know,
Mount
yeah,
Vernon.
yeah. You know, the 2 and the 5 blocks away from Mount
Well,
Vernon.
that's what we used to do.
yeah.
We used to, in my younger days, we used to catch the subway to Mount Vernon and catch a cab from Mount Vernon to White Plains. So that's
pricey.
yeah. Well, yeah,
That's
it'd be a
pricey.
bunch of us.
Right.
Cap
Right.
Bressler has a question. The MTA is an authority. What do you think about making the water sewage an authority so that it could bond out its own debt, helping us to deal with our limited debt obligations so that we can invest in fixing our failing infrastructure?
I'm torn on that because on the one hand, I see the need for more bonding and more fixing of the infrastructure and an entity that is going to pay attention only to that. On the other hand, I don't want to see another entity that's not under the control of the legislature. If we could come up with another system for setting up these separate agencies so that it's not just the governor that's in charge, then I would take a look at it. I think it's time for us to take a look at a lot of the stuff that the state does. Maybe it's time for us to rearrange the way we do things. One of the things that I've talked about is I want to see a separate agency set up to deal with clean water. Right now it's split between the Public Service Commission that regulates private water companies and the Health Department that deals with contaminants and the level of contaminants in water, and the Environmental Facility, DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation, that deals with clean surface water. And so they're all over the place. And the only entity that I see that's dealing with pipes, clean water pipes and preservation of drinking water sources is New York City. They are, they have the big water system. And then there's a couple of places upstate New York, like Syracuse or whatever, where they have their own water system. This should be a state function. I don't want to take it away from New York City, but the state should be doing something similar for the rest of the state and working with New York City to make sure that everybody has clean drinking water.
Actually, it's Mount Vernon. They have that drinking water challenge every year, and Mount Vernon wins because we have the city water.
Right.
Where we don't use the county, we have city water, and it's supposed to be the best tasting water in Westchester County.
Right. Yep. But even there, we're dependent on New York City's rates.
Okay.
And so New York City charges more, and so now everybody else has got to charge more.
Okay.
But we also have private water companies, and some of them are outrageously expensive. I mean, I live in the territory of a private water company, and I pay $150 a quarter just for the privilege of living there. If I bought no water at all.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
So that's $600 a year, just an administrative fee. Why? Because I live in one place rather than another. All right, so they're gouging us, and you go to the Public Service Commission, they don't really focus on this. This is not one of the areas that they're focused on. So I think the answer to this is to set up a separate entity. But so going to Kat's point, I think we got to do the same thing with sewers and disposal of waste. So.
What is there anything I didn't ask you, or anything that you can speak
You've
about?
been here the full show. Congratulations, man.
Well, can I leave now and give you?
No, but anything.
My wife just sent me a text like, "Where are you?" I just sent her a text back and said, "I'm still on the air." I can talk forever. Can't you figure that out? Yeah, there's one issue
Very informative. Very, very informative.
No,
I think
great.
there's
It was
one
a
thing
great
that we
one.
got to take a look at, and that is the Tappan Zee Bridge.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Yeah,
We've
talk
got
about
all
that.
kinds of controversy over that. Again, as you can tell, I've mixed emotions towards my Democratic governor. I'm a Democrat, but my job as an assemblyman is to keep him in line.
And
you know?
keep them honest. Keep them
Yeah.
honest. Keep them
And
honest.
so the Tappan Zee Bridge, I applaud that he's able to do these big projects. Okay, there was a need to do something there. But again, his style is such that he bullies things through, and doesn't pay enough attention to what people on the ground want. Like the name of the bridge, for example. I understand we needed to name something after Mario Cuomo. Did we have to name this bridge after Mario Cuomo?
I thought he wasn't going to do it.
Yeah, my preference would have been the Queens County Courthouse.
Isn't
Mario
that like a conflict, though? A conflict of interest because he's the governor and.
No, it's not. He didn't
Built
do it
the
after.
bridge?
Well, there's nothing that says he can't name it after himself. but he named it after another governor. You know, who was a good governor. I mean, nobody's criticizing Mario, and he was a good lawyer. So it seemed to me, and he was so proud of being from Queens. To me, the appropriate thing was Queens County Courthouse, or you call it the Cuomo Whitestone Bridge. You know, attaching to Queens. So, but the thing that really bothers me and a lot of people is he removed the words Tappan Zee from the bridge. You notice I said Cuomo Whitestone Bridge.
Right.
Okay?
You still kept Whitestone.
Exactly. And Mario named the Tappan Zee Bridge after Malcolm Wilson, former governor. And it was the Malcolm Wilson Tappan Zee Bridge. The legislation that got snuck into our last big bill was just the Mario Cuomo Bridge. And that's going to cost millions of dollars to change all of those signs.
So Mario Cuomo named it after?
His dad.
After his dad. So the two spans which replaced the old Tappan Zee Bridge, which used to be called the Malcolm Wilson Tappan Zee Bridge.
And who made that? Who named it that?
That was a piece of legislation that we voted on in a special session that dealt with 10 items.
Okay.
And the governor insisted on putting that in the bill. You know, so that's what he wanted.
You voted in favor?
Yeah, we all did, because it was also included the sales tax for Westchester County. It included making the mayor of the city of New York continuing his control over the city school systems. It included a whole bunch of other stuff.
And that's how a lot of bills get passed. There's things that
at
get
the end of session. Exactly. During session, we argue over every word in the little bill, but at the end of session, you've got this big bill that comes down, and you try to read it, but you know, every once in a while you get to make a change in it because you find something in it that needs to be changed. And the speaker in our house is very good. He listens to us, and will make the changes that he can make. But this wasn't a change we could, you know, we said, no, this is not a good idea. Right. And like I said, so now I'd like to see us reinsert the words Tappan Zee. So call it the Mario Cuomo Tappan Zee Bridge to continue that identification with the area. And there are a whole bunch of other issues there as well. The way people are being charged for tolls, the way lanes are being changed here and there, the impact on the community.
Yeah, I saw that whole issue with the tolls and the discrepancies and
we can have an entire show on that, but that's something. Again, see, the legislature, all we can do is criticize. All we can do is call up the department and say, what are you doing? This is not the way it should be done. And we've done that.
Right.
We put some pressure on them to try to get them to change things.
Wow.
But that's an agency run by the governor.
Now, what was the toll issue? Same thing with the tri-borough? Was the same?
Yep. Same thing.
That's the thing. Cynthia had posted. She was supposed to write an article about that. How she owed $60 in tolls, but the penalties was $700, and then some people wasn't even getting the toll bill.
Right.
You know.
Exactly.
And I told my wife, I said, we got to check. see if we, you know, I have Easy Pass, but you know sometimes
I got a call from a friend out in Queens. He said he has Easy Pass, but they missed the Easy Pass and billed him on his license plate instead, and he didn't get the first bill. So the first bill he got was from a collection agency for several $100s.
Wow. See.
So you know, technology doesn't always work.
Are they trying to do that with all the bridges now? Or?
Yeah, yes, they're doing away with this.
When we went to pick the paper, there's no toll people. It's just those little radios.
We rent a U-Haul once a month.
Okay.
No, we have.
What happens when you have a rental? Sure.
We're at 139. 140. We got 20 minutes left.
Oh,
we started late. I got the time.
20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Well, you know what? We stopped, so we got 10 minutes.
I didn't know.
10.
No, remember he stopped. We have 10 minutes left.
No, we're not going to keep this.
We have 10 minutes.
But anyway,
left.
on this issue,
because we stopped the stream.
The governor has decided to do away with all of the cash lanes, and I have objected strenuously to that because there are a lot of people who, for whatever reason, don't want an Easy Pass. Or it just doesn't work for them.
Doesn't that, and then that cuts jobs. Doesn't that cut?
It cut out jobs. It's, in my mind, it makes scofflaws out of people who want to pay the toll. There are a lot of people who have $10 in their pocket. They want to pay the toll, and by the end of the month, they've spent that $10 on something else. It's not their fault.
Right.
They may not be good at planning, but that's all the money they have. They work at jobs. They get paid hourly wage, and they don't have a lot of money. We found this with the buses.
Check,
People can't afford to get the monthly pass because it takes up their whole check.
Right.
They got to pay for the bus, which is more expensive to take it daily, but that's their only choice. It's the same kind of thing here. They're going across the bridge. That's all the money they have, and they want to pay for it right there.
Right.
And they can't.
When I first started working in the city, again living in Long Island, I couldn't afford the monthly
Exactly.
Train ticket for like 3 months. It took me
Exactly.
like 3 months before I was able to officially afford it, and then go from that
Right,
point.
right.
I eventually got to the weekly passes. Eventually, you know what I'm saying, and then it took me 3 months to get
and now
to a point where I could actually buy a monthly pass.
Right, exactly. So that's one issue. Second issue is you have to have a credit card, or you have to pay for the Easy Pass in advance, and people may not have the money to load that Easy Pass.
Right.
They may not have the credit card. They may not have a bank account. And so whatever, and then there are other people who just don't want to be tracked for whatever reason.
Yeah, it does track you.
It does track you, right? And also, look, I remember talking to guys in a taxi company.
So there's a Metro card too. You know that.
Right.
Yeah.
So a guy in a taxi company wants the bill. He wants to pay it now, get it, so he can go back to the taxi company and get reimbursed.
Right.
He doesn't want to have to wait until the end of the month to get reimbursed.
That's right. You're right about that too.
So this changes, it has a lot of implications. Now, the way they're doing it is they're reading license plates, and sometimes they read them wrong. And for whatever reason, we're hearing a lot of people are not getting the bill for having crossed the bridge. And so you miss the first $6 or whatever it is that's going to charge you, and then you miss the second notice. The next notice you get is from a collection agency. I think it goes to a collection agency 30 or 60 days.
Right.
So it's pretty quick.
Right.
And that bill is going to be, like you said, a multiple of.
Right.
It may be
Right.
$60, maybe $100.
Right.
And we have to recognize that not everybody's got a mailbox. You're talking about Mount Vernon, parts of Yonkers, parts of wherever. There are no mailboxes. Poorer people live in communities where it's not safe to put mail in a mailbox. And let's face it, the rest of the county too. People steal mail out of mailboxes.
Hey, it was just a thing.
story
At the house, they had me check. We got like 10 packages coming in for Christmas gifts. They had me check it every 15 minutes because people were walking around
and
taking
Exactly.
taking all the FedEx and UPS packages.
And if it looks
right
like
off
an
the-
official envelope from the state, somebody might take it.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
That's right.
the system is under, and it's also of the belief that government is always doing everything right, that they're sending out the notices properly, they're sending them to the right addresses. That's not always the case. I had a client who got a bill for whatever the amount was for going through a toll in Buffalo. He'd never been to Buffalo, and he doesn't own the car that they sent it to him on. So somebody put something in the computer wrong.
Right. Right.
And so I wrote a letter for him saying, my client doesn't own this car, never has, and has never been to Buffalo, never heard again.
Right.
But that happens now if you're dealing with this kind of a system.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's dangerous.
I think we've got to look into this. It calls for, and they're doing it on every of the bridges, every one of the bridges.
Yeah.
I want to personally thank you for taking your time
thank you.
and come on a Sunday night and coming through and explaining a lot of this stuff to our audience. And I actually learned a few things myself. Seriously, people think I know it all. I learn from every story I do. I got to do research, so I learn something with every story I do. So, but hopefully some of this information was instrumental and
Well, I
educational for
appreciate
some
the
of our
chance
people.
to come on and
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
to people who listen to you.
Yeah.
It's another way, it's our job. I like doing it.
And I hope that you come back.
Yeah, I'll be
feel
glad to come
free.
back.
Come back, especially when anything's going on needs to be explained.
Yeah, maybe
You
after
know,
the
this is-
session starts, and
right.
we start,
Okay.
things
Yeah,
start,
that'd be
some of
great.
the issues come up.
That'd be great.
Because we've got to talk to all the people out there. We got to motivate them to get involved.
Right, right.
Yes.
It's
We're doing better with the local level now, but we still need now the state level to come. And just do it. Cousin comes
as
through
you see,
sometimes.
votes count.
Right, and just do it.
Votes
Cousin
matter.
she come through sometimes, but we need more. We need more explaining this. What's going on in the state.
You see what's happened on the national level. Votes matter,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
And was it
Yeah.
Jesse Jackson who said, "If you don't vote, you don't count"?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
You don't have a right to complain if you weren't out there voting. Go out and get registered,
right.
and make sure you pay attention and you vote.
Listen to
So,
him,
so when are
folks.
you up again? When are you?
I'm up in November.
November.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be running in November.
Okay.
Running for re-election. But this will be an active year. I think it's going to be hotly contested everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
We saw a great activism coming
Right.
from the left this time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And
we got to keep that up.
We got to keep that up. And
We
if
have
you
to keep
take a
it up.
look, we got a lot of congressmen who are Republicans in this state, and they didn't. If you put together a congressman from New York, a Republican congressman from New York, and from Illinois, and from Connecticut, and Massachusetts, and California, that's the margin by which the Republicans control Congress.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and they abandoned us. They abandoned their state. They voted against New York when they made Paul Ryan the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
I heard he's trying to step down. He might not want to continue to beat him.
Well, I'm sure he can get a good job getting paid a lot of money somewhere else.
Yeah,
Right
he's making it. He's been making that. He's thinking about stepping down.
that could be. But
Sort of CNN and even Fox this morning, both of them were talking about it.
right. But I think we've got to put pressure on these Congress members and saying,
Absolutely.
you abandoned your state. It's not enough that you voted no. You didn't stop it. You know, when there were a whole bunch of them that voted yes.
Right.
And then that's even worse. Like, you know, look what you did to the state of New York. Yes, some of the people in your district may benefit by it. But, you know, by and large, you're hurting everybody.
Absolutely.
That's
Well, like
right.
I said, welcome
thanks
to
for
come
giving
back
me a
here
chance to-
anytime.
Yeah, thank
and
you.
with
Thank
the
you.
paper, you know, we have the paper. If you have anything
Yep.
you need to reach out,
I will
send us
definitely
something.
take a look at it.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
got to get a hand clap. There you go.
All right, I'm going to head. My wife is texting me. Where are you? I'll go answer her. Nice to see you again.
Okay. All right, take care.
You can grab one of the papers right here. Here we go. Okay.
He got to go home to his wife.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
ain't playing.
So we have, I don't know, somewhere around 5 minutes left. Last words. Excuse me.
No, I just like to. I just like to thank the Assemblyman, man, you know, and if Kate's still listening, I just saw you the Facebook Messenger, and she's the one that he's on his way. I just left him.
Oh, okay.
so thank you for that great shout out.
I
But-
think she's the only one to confirm so far. I
Yeah.
think she's the 7th or the 14th. I have to.
Has anyone asked Mike?
I haven't reached out to him yet because he
Well,
just
I guess
announced.
you could do that.
Yeah, he had just announced.
But I heard he was a good friend of his.
No, but
I am.
but
I am.
but
I don't talk to him like
he
that.
hadn't
We're
announced
good
yet.
people.
So at the time, they were the two that I had access to
But,
that
all
announced.
right, so
now that
I-
he announced, we need
I'll
to
reach
reach out to him.
I'll reach
Yeah,
out.
But-
now,
but-
now that he announced, you could.
Yeah, but we have Kate for I believe the 7th. We're trying to lock.
And tell him to come this time.
Shelly
Last time
down.
He came. He said he couldn't come on Sunday.
We're trying to lock Shelly down for the 21st. Waiting for her to confirm. So either the 14th or the 28th, if he's available.
Oh, you were talking to me?
Yeah. Kate has confirmed for this. Kate has confirmed. Kat. I said Kate 3 times. Kat has confirmed for the 7th.
Yes, I got
Shelly
it.
is still hasn't confirmed yet, but it's for the 21st. So we have the 14th and the 28th open still right now. So
Got it.
yeah, I'm still waiting for Shelly. If Shelly's people, the 21st, I need a confirmation. And Kat, thank you for confirming for the 7th.
Looking forward to meeting you, Kat. Ben told me he's a good friend of hers for many years.
Who?
Ben from Yonkers Voice.
Oh, yeah. She's good people.
Yeah, she's good people.
She's good people.
She's been on the show a couple of times for the people for Bernie.
for Bernie.
Yeah, for the.
And she'll be back, and she's gonna do a hell of a show.
Gail
Also-
Baxter said, "Terrific show, thanks."
Hey, Gail, what's happening? But let me see. I'm trying to. I don't know why I can't get off this page.
What page?
The actual show.
Oh.
I can't.
I never was on
Here we
it.
go.
It never came.
Something I had to say. Oh, January 7th. I hope people tune in. We're gonna have Amy Bellantoni and her client will have a deep discussion on some issues in Mount Vernon. I will not be here.
That's the same day. That's the same. Cat's coming. The 7th.
Really?
Yeah. I ain't know nothing about that date you just said until you just said it.
Oh, okay.
I already confirmed Cat. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to split that up.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to split we're gonna have to split that up because that's when Amy was available the 7th. I didn't know Kat was coming on the 7th.
Yeah, she just confirmed.
Okay. Well, we have to split that up, and Kat can stay through that conversation. Matter of fact, Kat can co-host that one because I won't be here. for that one. It's going to be deep. And I think Councilman Wallace is coming too that day.
Okay, so that's good.
Because I think Councilman Wallace is going to come on that day.
Next week we have Laura Case.
Laura Case, hey, all right.
She's gonna bang him in the head for Christmas Eve talking about homelessness.
Well, that's good. No,
take them out their comfort zone.
I think I appreciate Laura for bringing this issue to the forefront, and we continue to talk about it. This Friday the 22nd, Westchester Correction Association and Cupcake Cutie Boutique is having their Christmas party on the 22nd. It's 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. at the Sexy Vintage Lounge in White Plains. 171 Main Street, White Plains, New York. The tickets is $90. Now, I want to hear people say, "Oh my God, the tickets are $90." Listen, you're getting a 3-course meal. 3-course meal. Right? And you're getting top shelf open bar.
Top shelf open bar. Say that again.
Top shelf.
Top shelf.
You can get your Hennessy, your Ciroc, your all those liquors that you like. It's open bar. A lot of people complain, but if you go to a party for $30, and then you go to the bar and you buy Hennessy all night, you already spent that $90 and some.
Right, and even if it's open bar, you don't get no Grey Goose and no Hennessy and none of that.
Thank you.
Because you got to pay for that. I know.
You're gonna pay for that.
I was drinking Grey Goose, and Grey Goose is never on the open bar.
So a lot of people I hate when people talk cheap, and then they talk financial silliness. Oh well, I'll go to this party, but your liquor, when you buy Hennessy, Ciroc, Grey Goose,
you pay almost $10 a pop anyway.
You paying almost $20. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You paying almost $20. so if you buy 4 drinks, if you buy 1 drink an hour, you done paid. You done paid for it. You done paid more.
You paid $100.
Right. So to each his own. Sometimes, and I really say this. We see, and this is what I tell people. When I was coming up in the 90s, we had black tie affairs, and it was a full house.
Yeah.
And we invited elected officials, right? Why do we do that? So they could see that we deserve the money that we make.
Right.
We work hard, but we deserve the money that we make. So, black officers, especially at Westchester County Jail, they don't get dressed up. And they don't invite the elected officials so the elected officials can see that we're human beings. We have families. We have wives. And we're not the bruisers, or the dumb correction officers that just like to fight. But we're educated and smart thinking people, and we could be civilized in the atmosphere where it's a formal atmosphere. And that's how you get respect. And I have to use your brother as an example with the Spanish side. I said, listen, they do 3 or 4 a year, and it's packed, and everybody's dressed up and looking nice, right? Why can't the black officers do something like that? Why can't we do something else, but without pulling teeth, just to get you to $90, just to get $90, But you want to brag that you made $160, $160,000 that year for overtime, but you can't take $90 out and get dressed up. Put your Jordans, 15s on the shelf. Put your True Religion pants up, whatever you're wearing, all that, and put on a nice suit and come and let people see that you deserve the money that you make.
D. Wilson said, "I don't drink brown liquors. However, if I wasn't sick, I would be there with bells on. $90 is a good price for what's available."
But you could come for the meal.
She said if I wasn't sick.
Yeah,
the second part of that, she said if I wasn't sick, I would be there with bells on because $90 is a good price for what is available.
But we know you there in spirit.
Feel better.
We know you there in spirit. You don't have to worry about that.
Lorraine, couple of people, Caitlin Gleason being one, spoke to me either on the phone or on instant message or whatever and said they were glad that you were afforded the opportunity to tell your story, and it needed to have been told earlier, and they were glad that you explained and told your story because of all the nonsense that was going on. So they were, you know, they were bigging that up. They were, they was, you know, giving you props. And it was like for being brave and bold enough to tell your story, because everybody's not going to want to talk about stuff like that.
Well, that's why I never said it.
So that's why, you know, you got compliments. They came to me because it was people I knew. You know what I'm saying? But there was and Caitlin said this yesterday to me outside of the event yesterday. She told me that yesterday.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And Dee said, thank you all. I appreciate the love. Yo, with that, we're out of here. You could be doing anything else. Thank you for everybody who tuned in. Those I mentioned, those I didn't. I didn't get to everybody else's comments because we wanted the Assemblyman to be able to talk freely and break down. He gave a wealth of information. You can watch this later on Facebook, or it will be on Black Westchester by sometime tomorrow. I think we're at show 151 now or something like that. Again, props to everybody, for Andre Wallace for letting us use his building, and everybody who donated and contributed to yesterday. That was really great to see those kids out there, and we need to have more stuff like that. And it was good to see people of from their various sides politically, you know, all contributed to, you know, to the kids. And it was all about the kids, and nothing else was important.
Put everything
else aside. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, we got to stop this blood Crips mentality, because I supported this one and you supported that one. You know what I'm saying? Now we're immortal enemies forever. That's some BS. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, you could have been doing anything else, but you decided to ride with us, and we greatly appreciate it. This is Black Westchester Presents the People Before Politics radio show every Sunday night, 6 to 8 on InTheMixRadio.com. Until next week, peace.
And I'm not afraid to say it. 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 22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic